The Knitterati collection, or should I say the Glitterati. Hi, I'm Ambah. I design patterns for knitters, and in this podcast, The Design Tales, I share tales of the design process from inspiration to tips, styling, anything in between. Generally, each episode I will be sharing new patterns, and occasionally I'll dive back into my archives and share something older and tell the story of that pattern as well. Today I have two new patterns to share that have a connection. They're both part of the same collection, if you will. I am planning on adding a couple more to the collection, so it will be more than a two-pattern collection eventually. And that's the Knitterati Cardy and Knitterati Pullover. I'm wearing a version of the Cardy here, and I was just shaking the pullover version before. Both patterns offer a choice in length between a cropped, which I'm wearing and my samples are knitting, and also a regular length. If you like a bit more length in your garments, then you could knit the regular length. They're both in DK weight and both feature a folded collar in the case of the pullover and button band for the cardigan. So the similarities, they both feature the same ribbing as well, which is to knit to purl ribbing. And they also feature an optional embroidery option, which is quite a fun additional element to the pattern. The embroidery is purely optional. I consider the garments in themselves to be classic wardrobe items that you would reach for again and again, just those staples that are really handy. This green one, which I have not embellished, although I am tempted to after putting these buttons on, because I think the black as an embellishment would look really cool, so watch this space. But that said, I knit this one as a plain option just to have that in my wardrobe, and then I have my embroidered option as well, which was the first sample I knit. The pattern includes a video tutorial for the embroidery component, and there are also two templates included. One for what I refer to as the Knitterati seal, which is a hand with a ball of yarn and stitch symbols on each of the fingers and rays of light, and then a triangle of knitting needles. Obviously, it's a bit of a play on the Illuminati, the secret society, although I like to refer to this as a Knitterati, the not-so-secret society. So it's all very tongue-in-cheek and just a bit of fun. A few years ago, the idea occurred to me, and I reached out to a graphic designer who I've worked with, and we worked together on the symbol and artwork, which I then had printed on t-shirts. I made enamel pins, various merch with the Knitterati symbol, which was quite fun. In part, these were for prizes. I'd have them as giveaways, and with various products that I added to my Etsy store, including keychains and t-shirts and enamel pins and anything else I could think of. Stickers, all for a bit of fun. I custom printed a few sample variations for myself over the years. I printed a sweatshirt with the big symbol on the front, and then I actually cut it off to make it cropped because I like the cropped. And I printed a knit cardigan that had the symbol on the back, and also the knit love symbol, I call it, which is a heart, a yarn heart with knitting needles, which the same graphic designer worked with me on as well. I used that for some branding for a few knit-alongs, and then when I ordered the sample, the knit cardigan sample, I thought, oh, let's pop that on the sleeve. That would be cute. So my knit heart on my sleeve. I found myself wearing these items quite regularly. I feel quite funky wearing them. Feels like a fun statement as a knitter, and yeah, they're on heavy rotation in my wardrobe. So I'd been pondering for a while about incorporating that as a knitting pattern and how best to achieve that. And then it occurred to me that embroidery would be a really good way to do that. Initially, I had thought the pullover, because I was wearing the pullover version quite a lot at the time, and I started there. And then I thought, well, if I'm doing a pullover, I may as well do a cardigan. I love wearing cardigans, and it's a great option to mix up, you know, in the wardrobe. Thinking about the designs, I decided I wanted them to be quite simple, classic designs. Could be on high rotation in a wardrobe, something that you'd reach for again and again whether it had the embroidery or not, so that it could be just a classic wardrobe item or a really fun, funky piece. I also liked the idea of adding embroidery over the years, a bit like a tattoo collection, adding meaningful images as life events occur, that your garment could be a record of adventures or stories or anything really. In the time that I've been test knitting these, there's been some really fun Australian stories that have come up that I've thought would be fun to document that in the garment. For example, a standout is Neil the seal, who is a Tasmanian seal who wreaks havoc twice a year on a Tasmanian town when Neil the seal arrives to shed. So Neil the seal, who is humongous, like a ton or something, he's huge. In trying to shed, he's rubbing himself against items which cause great damage because he's so big, and it includes cars and infrastructure, which is not really funny, but it's quite amusing, the Neil the Seal season, and yeah, quite the character. So Neil the Seal could be a fun image to incorporate as part of a story. So the options are limitless, really. The pattern includes the 2 templates, one for the Knit Love and one for the Knitterati seal. And the tutorial explains how you can use those and also anything else that you might like to. So if you have your own drawing or perhaps a child's drawing or something that's meaningful to you, you could add any design you want to with the embroidery technique. And the technique I'm using is quite simple chain stitch. I'm not much of a stitcher. If you had more of those skills, you could do whatever you wanted. The tutorial is more about how to apply it to the knitwear so that it's stable and you don't need to use a hoop. Just a bit of fun, really. So with the embroidery, I worked on my swatch first to have a look and see how it turned out, and I was really pleased with the result. So I decided to go forward with my idea and knit the cardigan and embroider on it. When it came to embroidering this cardigan, I initially thought I would do it all the same bright pink. I love that effect of the pink on this swatch. However, when I started, I played around with colour a bit. I decided that the knit symbols on the fingers would work well in a different colour, a darker colour. Then I found some glittery yarn in my stash and thought that would be great for the rays. And the knitting needles are really pale, it's hard to see. I actually initially used this green for those, so it was quite a dark green, and I didn't love it. They really stood out in a way that I found a bit intense. So I ended up unpicking that part and then using a light pink, which kind of blends in a bit more with the other colour palette that I've chosen. And then finished off with some lovely mother of pearl buttons, which are quite wide and add that nice little sparkle aspect to it. The pullover, as I showed you before, I used a metallic thread, and I actually used just a really fine, I guess it's like a cobweb. It doesn't have a weight on it, but very fine thread. I used it in the same way, the chain stitch, but it resulted in a very subtle effect, which I also love. I think that's really cool. I chose not to do the knitting needles on that one because the thread was so fine. It was hard to kind of get the right impact with them. And I debated using another colour yarn or another yarn. And I tried having multiple threads of this to make it a bit thicker, but it just didn't work. So I ended up leaving that off, which is my prerogative and yours. You can embroider whatever you like onto your project. So yeah, the Glitterati Knitterati, extra fun. So back to that more classic design. The design features of the pattern are, as mentioned before, choice between the crop and the longer length. And then each has the rolled collar. The pullover has a rolled collar for the neckband. And there's a video tutorial showing you how to create that part of it. And then it's the simple ribbing for the hem and cuffs, which in the black is harder to see. but I know I will wear black a lot. I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this one. So I opted for black for mine. The cardigan has the rolled button band, and there's also a video tutorial on how to work that. It's not a double knit one worked along the band. It's actually start off as you would with most ribbed button bands, where you pick up all the stitches along and around the front of the cardigan. So you're carrying all those stitches. And then you'll work stocking it, and along the way create the buttonholes that are joined front and back. Nice sealed buttonhole there that's worked within the rows. You don't need to finish that afterwards, quite straightforward. And then I opted to sew down my button band, and that's optional. I do include a tutorial for the button band, the picking up stitches and the sewing down. Some of our testers preferred to work a 3-needle bind off or a crochet bind off, binding off the live stitches with the picked up edge. It's up to you, really. That's personal choice. I actually started it off with a 3-needle bind off and found it was a bit bulkier than I wanted, so that's why I opted for the sewn down edge on the button band. So it might be a new to you button band to try out, and I hope that you might enjoy it. For this one, I found some beautiful vintage buttons in my stash that were just perfect. I initially had something else in mind, but then I pulled these out and was like, oh, that's it. Which is why now I'm coming back to, maybe I need to embroider the Knitterati in black on the back of this. I think that would look really cool, actually. Meanwhile, it's a really good neutral basic cardigan. One other thing about the buttonholes is that the pattern offers 2 size options. So there's a hole for a 1-inch size button, which I've used here, a nice big button. Or there's an option for a smaller buttonhole, so you could have like a 3/4 inch size button, a little bit smaller button. So there's 2 options with the buttonholes, and the lengths as mentioned, and the garments, pullover or cardigan. For the yarn, I used Prosper Yarn, a New Zealand yarn company. I actually don't recall the base. It's a DK weight base. I'll pop that in the show notes below, and it's also in the pattern and on the pattern page if you're curious about it. It's a gorgeous yarn. I haven't worked with it before, but I certainly will again after this. I think it's a great garment yarn. It's a non-superwash, really soft as well. It's bloomed beautifully after blocking. And the colourway of the year, this is the 3rd, maybe 4th. I'm working on something else with Ent at the moment too. So at least 4 designs in this particular colour this year. I'm loving it, this beautiful, beautiful green. I shot a little segment before where I'm standing and trying on each one of them and turning around. So you can have a look at that after this. And one other thing, another embroidered item, this fire hat. So one of the accessories that I will add to the collection, the Knitterati collection, the hat accessory. I think that'll be a fun way to play with the embroidery and not be too committed to the outcome. This one came about when about a month or so ago, leading up to my partner's birthday, I noticed one of his hats was getting rather well worn. And I said to him, if you want a new hat, let me know. I could make you a birthday hat. And he said, yes. And I said, what would you like? And he said, fire, I want flames. And I was like, okay, that was unexpected, but okay. So I thought about it for a while, wondering the best approach for that. I thought about stranded colour work. I wondered if I could do a mosaic option. I thought a lot about doing an illusion or shadow knit version as well, where hopefully the flames would sort of flicker as you turn. I've been seeing quite a bit of cool shadow work or illusion projects and designs that are very inspiring. And I was leaning towards that direction when it occurred to me that, the embroidery, that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now. So it would be fun to experiment with that a bit more. So again, it's the chain stitch. I used 3 different colours and just worked them around each other for that gradient effect. And it's like little fire pixies. So he was quite happy with that, which pleased me that he's been wearing it pretty much non-stop since I gave it to him. It's always good when you hit the mark with a knit gift. This was the first one I knit, the tweed version. And here's the pullover, the cropped option, which is cute with a dress or high-waisted items. With that fine, shiny, metallic embellishment. The Knitterati Cardy and Pullover, and watch this space for the hat and other accessory to come in the next few months. I hope I've inspired you to embellish your knit, and perhaps one of these designs will be perfect to fill a hole in your wardrobe. I know it certainly filled a couple of holes in mine, which is very pleasing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.